So if I may just begin with a traditional homage to the Triple Gem, something we like to do before we expound the Dhamma. Lotus buds at heart center. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Respect to Kozin, AZ, the Bhikkhu Sangha, and the Bhikkhuni Sangha. So I think I would like to begin with a honest confession. And that is, I am absolutely jealous of Venerable Jeff's voice, his teaching voice, his meditation voice. It is clear, it's pleasant, has the best temperament, and I absolutely love it. I say that because I grew up south of Boston, so you're not going to get any of that with me. Okay? So just forewarn you. Also, Kozin, in getting to know him the first time around, he had, after a Dhamma talk, a few Dhamma talks, he heard, he invited me to give a couple Dhamma talks, and then afterwards he says, your Dhamma talks are like trying to drink from a fire hose. And so I've been trying to work on that. But to be honest with you, I'm thinking like sometimes it takes a fire hose to start to damper the fires of greed, anger, and ignorance, right? So I may blast some of you. I do try to slow the temperament down a little bit, but just once it gets going, it gets going. So, okay. So if I may, I'd also like to just give you a little background on where this Dhamma talk is springing from. This Dhamma talk is inspired and springing from what is called a udana. A udana is a joyful utterance. And so this is not any joyful utterance. It's a very particular joyful utterance. It is a joyful utterance of the Buddha. So if some of you would like to, I know there's lots of texts in all the traditions. If you would like to find some text that is also very inspiring, there is a collection of kind of like poems, reflections, called the Udana in the Pali Canon. What that is, it's a collection of reflections and poems from the early Arahants, the Arahant Bhikkhus and the Arahant Bhikkhunis. Very, very beautiful and inspiring collection to have. But this particular one, this joyful utterance, is one that the Buddha made. Buddha himself, he made many. But this particular one is the one that he had inwardly to himself. He talks about this. He's like, after the breakthrough of the Dhamma and the awakening, I said this to myself. And it is called the House Builder. Now what I'll do, it's one of my favorites. I haven't chanted it in a while. It's something our tradition does. We chant a lot of what is accepted to be the words of the Buddha in our tradition. And the first time I heard it, I absolutely loved it. I love the way it sounds, especially with a group of monks, 4, 6, 8, 10 monks. It sounds really cool. So the sound of it kind of got my ear before I even knew what it was in the meaning. But again, to forewarn you, I am not a very skilled chanter. I sound really good when I have like people around me. I kind of shadow bang. However, I would like to recite it just as keeping the tradition alive, and also just to make it sound like I really know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I will recite it in Pali, and then Kozen is going to translate it afterwards. Right? So of course I probably will mess it up, but it's very beautiful, and then we'll talk about what it is. So as the Buddha, we all know the story of the Buddha, and as he sat under the Bodhi tree and he had his awakening, he saw the Dhamma. And so what he said to himself after that was anika jati sansaram naga sangani vakanu gahagara gaditosi puna kehang nakahasi sabbe te pasuga baga gahatu tang visankatam visankara katang chitang anhanam kayam anjata. So what does that mean? In English, it says, many, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, in my many rounds of birth and death and samsara, I have traveled and traveled and have not felt complete, or have not found the answer to the cause of suffering. Painful, painful, painful has this journey been. The amount of bones that I shed in my samsaric wandering would pile up greater than it would dwarf the range of Mount Everest. Now the tears that I've shed in my samsaric wandering would be greater than all the oceans put together. Then he says, I see you, house builder. You will build your house no more. I've taken down the walls, the rafters, and the ridgepole, and I abide free from house building, and I abide free and happy liberated. So what is he talking about? I've seen you, house builder. What does that mean? And at first, when I looked into this translation, he's basically talking about destroying a house. So in my mind, I was like, cool, the Buddha was like Godzilla, just kind of like smashing. I'm like, well, no, that can't be it. It's got to be more. And so the house builder, what he's referring to is samsara, right? The house he likens to sankhara of the body and the samsara. The ridge poles are the craving, right? And then the main rafter, the center beam, he says, is ignorance. So I dismantle them and taking that all apart. So how do we understand that? How do you see, what does that mean in your own practice, in your own mind? What does it mean to destroy the house? Can I recognize the house builder? So let's kind of take this in step by step and try to understand this meaning. Sankhara has a few aspects to it. Most of you may be familiar with this word, but those of you who aren't, it means formations. Right? You may have heard that our formations, our mental constructs, sometimes it's called. So it has a few aspects to it. You have kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, mano sankhara. So he's talking about this mantlingness and finding freedom and liberation. Some people think that the Buddha is the creator of the Dharma. But he makes it very clear, I did not create the Dhamma. I discovered it. I've seen what's already there. So many people think that the Buddha, his first sermon, or second sermon, the Dhammacakka, the Buddha, the night of his meditation, he saw the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. But that is incorrect. What the Buddha saw that night was a teaching called Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination, or the 12 links of dependent origination. The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path is the way that we could see the 12 links of dependent origination. Okay? Now, of course, dependent origination is really like the heart of the Buddha's teaching. It's something that is very, very unique to Buddhism. And its simplest form or way to explain it is simply, where do we get this self of sense, a sense of self in the world? I exist in the world. This subjective, objective experience that we all seem to live in. Right? More specifically, he's talking about, where does this sense of I come from? So in modern philosophical language, it's existential thinking. The I, the me, myself. Where is this coming from? And so there's a very famous Zen koan, right? The teacher will tell the student, who am I? Who are you? Now go to the forest for about 25 years and think about that. Okay? So it's pointing to the same thing. So I, me, myself. Where does this idea, where does this concept come from? We really don't know. It's the nature of ignorance. One thing we do know very clearly, right, without a doubt, we know, I speak for myself here, but you ask yourself, listening to the Dhamma, don't fully accept what you hear, don't deny what you hear. Just say, can I see this in my own experience? Ehi Pasiko, come and see the Dhamma for yourself. It's to be experienced by the wise. So one thing I do know very clearly is what I like and what I don't like. Without a question. I mean, We even have buttons on Facebook, thumbs up, thumbs down, like this, don't like that. Okay, but where is this coming from? And this is very important because when we understand this, we can start to break free from this. Right? A very wonderful and teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, right? In order to not suffer, you must first understand suffering. So this existential way of thinking, the I, me, myself, is a root cause of suffering. So in order to understand this and break free, we have to understand where this comes from. So let's take this approach. If I was to ask you, tell me about you, right? Individual, tell me about yourself, or someone asks you. Most people, if they're mature, they will say, oh, they describe their social responsibilities. They'll describe their social roles in society. I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, I do this, I do that. It's great. But tell me about you, right? Tell me about you. Then we begin to say what? Oh, I like this. I like this kind of music. I like that kind of music. I like this kind of food. I like these kinds of smells. I find this pleasing. I don't like that music. Right? I don't like that kind of food. So we understand that very, very clearly. But who's the I that likes and doesn't like? And why is this important to begin to understand that? Because if we take an honest reflection just for a moment, and I ask you why you're sitting here, right? You've had a nice quiet day of mindfulness, lots of sitting, walking in the park. So hopefully the sankharas are calming down a little bit, right? The mind and the thought formations are beginning to still, and we have a little more clarity. How much of your time, individually ask yourself this, and energy, effort, has been spent moving towards what you like and moving away from what you don't like? A little bit. So these are two huge centrifugal drags of the mind. Massive movements in time and energy. Momentum goes towards running and pursuing what I want and what I do not. Desire and aversion. We understand that very clearly, but who's this I that likes and doesn't like? I exist. I exist in the world. I am here, you are here. So this I, this way of thinking, has so much power over us, does it not? So how are we going to see this in a way that we can begin to break free from it? We have to look, we have to see, we have to understand and investigate this. Where is this coming from? How do we do that? So if we look at the Noble Eightfold Path, it's broken up into 3 modes of training. Yes? Our ethical training, our meditative training, and our wisdom training. So the path factors that make up the meditative training, and they all work together. It becomes a feedback loop. They all start supporting each other. So if we look at our meditative training, we have this practice called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It is such an important practice. So I ask you to ask yourself, how well do I understand this practice? Great teachers, they're constantly talking about it. The Buddha, it's the Noble Eightfold Path. If one doesn't have a sense of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, now it becomes the 7-fold path. If one is not making the right effort into understanding this, now it becomes the 6-fold path. The 4 foundations of mindfulness precedes what? Or is the foundation work for what? The concentration, samadhi. So how do these work together? And the brilliance of the Buddha, he teaches that in a very clear way. So when we practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, what are we doing? What are we supposed to be doing? Right? Paying attention. We hear all this talk about waking up, being in the moment. We say that, but do we really clearly see and understand what that is? What does it mean to wake up? The word Buddha, right, Pali is an Indo-European language, so the word, people say it means enlightenment. Enlightenment's a new word, but awakening does apply to the word Buddha. Right? The word Bud means bud, just like we know bud in English. Buddha means the open bud, the flowering one, the awakening one. But what are we awakening up? What are we waking up from? What are we waking up to? What is the awakening experience? What does that mean? You know, waking up from the dream of existence. And according to the Buddha, we are all asleep dreaming about existence. This is the nature of ignorance and delusion. So when we practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, this is the way that we could begin to see clearly for ourselves where this sense of I is coming from. So in more fancy Pali jargon, and I think it's important, if we look at the 4 foundations of mindfulness, we know it's mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of sensations, mindfulness of mind, and then mindfulness of mind Dharma. Each one in Pali, and I like this because it's descriptive, Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana, Dhammanupassana. And so we see a word that's repeated 4 times, Nupassana. It's important to understand that word because it's descriptive of what we're supposed to be doing. Nupassana means to look again and again and again and again. Right, so the 4 foundations of mindfulness, another really good translation of Satipatthana, this is right mindfulness, is called Satipatthana, is 4 frames of reference. So we begin to make an effort to look at 4 aspects of our experience. That's why we practice the foundations of mindfulness. We are establishing mindfulness. Mindfulness means to see, to become aware, and to know what we are paying attention to. So we pay attention to the body. We pay attention to the sensations. We start paying attention to our mind. Then we start paying attention to very particular mind qualities. That's where the understanding is. When we get this I, this me, this myself, right? That's springing from what? Where's this springing from? How do we get our identity from? The body. Where are you? I'm at Mount Adam's temple. I am over here. Right? So we get a strong sense of self from our body. Athletes, models, strong sense of self. Or sensations. Oh, I don't feel very good today. I feel great today. I feel great. Or the mind. I think this. I'm unhappy. I'm happy. Right? So these are expressions of the self are coming from these 4 aspects of our experience. So when we begin to establish mindfulness, we're beginning to see and understand where this is coming from. And this is very important. Because once we start to look and see, you can't deny what you see. So let's do an exercise together. Most of you have brought your body here, yes? I know sometimes it's questionable, even for myself. I walk into a room, I'm like, why am I here? And I've been doing that my whole life. It's not an elderly thing. Right? Why? Because the mind is somewhere else, right? And the body is doing something. You go to look for our keys, our phone, it's in here, it's there. Why? Well, we physically were doing something else, but the mind was somewhere else. Where are we? We're not paying attention to what we were doing. Where's the mind? Right? It's all proliferating over something. So we all agree, you all brought your body here, yes? So let's do an exercise. Is this body of yours dependent on causes and conditions? Think? Right? What are some basic ones? The 4 elements. Earth, wind, fire, water. Solidity, temperature, right? Heat, like the heat element, the water element, the wind element. Right? In a sense of solidity, cohesion. If we have too much heat, what happens? The body ceases. Not enough heat, right? Too much water, we cease to exist. Not enough water, we cease to exist. If the body doesn't have some solidity, what happens? We don't have water, we turn to dust. So these elements all have to be in a perfect balance. So we get that clear. Our body is definitely dependent on causes and conditions. Is what is dependent on causes and conditions stable or unstable? Unstable. Why? Because those conditions change. So what is dependent on causes and conditions and unstable, is that satisfactory or unsatisfactory? Unsatisfactory. Right? Those conditions change. We want it to be a certain way, it doesn't happen. Right? What is dependent on causes and conditions, unstable, unsatisfactory, is that within your control or beyond your control? But you just told me this is your body. How much of our body is truly ours? Not much. We can move it around. That's about it. Right? If this was your body, why are you letting it get old? Why are you letting the wrinkles come? Why do you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night? Right? You said this is your body, yeah, we can move it around. That's about it. Now let's take the next foundation, mindfulness of sensations. Are sensations dependent on causes and conditions? What are those causes and conditions? The body is a living organism, right? And we're constantly being stimulated by our environment. Light is coming to the eyes, sound is coming to the ears, sensations to the skin. Right? So what is dependent on causes and conditions, which there are three basic sensations. It's very simple. Things either feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So what is dependent on causes and conditions, is that stable or unstable? Unstable. Right? Those conditions change. What is dependent on causes and conditions and unstable, is it satisfactory or unsatisfactory? Satisfactory. What is dependent on causes and conditions and unstable, is it within your control or beyond your control? You want to feel good all the time. But yet we say, this is my body. I feel this. This is just nature. This is the Dharma. So what are we seeing? When we begin to practice Satipatthana, we're beginning to gain insight into the nature of our very own existence. And in seeing that, where are you? We see the body very clearly, but am I the skin? Am I the bones? Am I this little ball of light glowing somewhere in the middle here? Like, where's you in your body? Same thing with sensations. We say this is I, this means myself. So once we begin to see that very clearly, we see, I'm not sure what it's called in Mahayana, but we call it the characteristics of existence. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. We see impermanence, we see unsatisfactoriness, non-self. Same thing with the mind and mind Dharma. We could apply this. So when we're taking the time to establish mindfulness, we could start to see more fully, more clearly, this idea of self doesn't quite concord with reality, does it? That's where the freedom is. We use this conventionally, but we know this truth. We know the Dhamma. We've seen the Dhamma for ourselves. So practicing Satipatthana is like the groundwork. It's the foundation. It's tilling the soil. It's where we can start to be ready to have and go into what is called samadhi, which is right concentration. Right? When we're practicing any aspect of practicing the four foundations of mindfulness, we can go into samadhi. What is samadhi? So people think meditative experiences are about attaining. We are attaining this certain state. I'm going to save you a lot of time and trouble. It's a little big secret. But don't take my word for it. See for yourself. That's why I wish Long Pu Hogan was here. Not Long Pu Hogan. Long Pu is what we say grandpa. means grandpa in the Thai forest tradition, Hogan. So it's what we call our elders. It's an endearing term, like grandpa. But Hogan here, he began his Dhamma talk with talking about the third noble truth, cessation. And pointing to that right away. You don't attain levels of meditation. What we experience are the cessation. We attain cessations of experience. This is the stilling and calming of our sankhara. We talk about becoming still. What is becoming still? The body, the mind. And in that stillness is seeing. So we've seen the cessation of sankhara. And that's important because we also see when the sankharas come up again. So now we're starting to see clearly for ourselves some very basic fundamental functions of the mind. In that seeing, when we see that to a certain degree, nowhere in that experience can we say, there is an I, me, myself. In the sense that this fixed, permanent, unchanging agency. That is the awakening experience. That is breaking free from the causes of suffering. Because what happens, this happens very naturally. That once we see this and understand this Dhamma for ourselves, once we see this, which is seeing the Paticca Samuppada. The Paticca Samuppada is, we would be here for weeks talking about that. But very simply, you've seen the Dhamma. You've seen it for yourself. So now we have the Dhammacakku. We have the eye of Dhamma. What keeps us in samsara, the ocean of suffering? Ignorance and desire. An old monk said, you have to kill your parents. I'm like, that's not very Buddhist. He's like, who's your parents? I'm like, well, my mom, my dad, I think. Maybe aliens, I don't know, but I believe my mom and my dad. It's like, you have to kill your parents. But he was talking about ignorance and desire. We have the two main things of why we are going around and birth again and again and again in samsara. What keeps us in samsara? Fetters. You could think of fetters like samsara is like a vast ocean, right? And you're deep down in the ocean of suffering. What keeps us there are the head fetters. The fetters are like the chain, the anchors. Once we've seen the Dhamma, we've seen the Paticca Samuppada, any aspect of it, clearly, right? We've cut away 3 of those fetters. 3 of those fetters are personality view, adhering to rites and rituals as a way of waking up, and Dhamma. Personality view means this I, this me, this myself. And so now I have the eye of Dhamma that I see this is just an idea. This is just a construct, which we have to use. I'm going to the store. I'm not going to say my non-self is going to the store. It's stupid. Right? But we've seen the Dhamma. That is the awakening experience. However, we have that many different ways. But now we've cut those 3 fetters. The Buddha talks very specifically about what that experience is like. And this is not only for monks, lay people, anybody here. This is called the stream entry experience, according to traditional Buddhist awakening practice. Right? We are sotapannas, we are stream enterers. We now have the eye of Dhamma. We've seen the Dhamma for ourselves directly. Pajatang veditabo vindi. One has seen for oneself the Dhamma. At that point, it's no longer a theory or an idea. We have that experiential understanding. So doubt is removed. We no longer doubt this practice. We no longer doubt what we're doing. We say, I've seen for myself. Doubt gone. Right? Silabbata paramasa, the second fetter that is cut, not adhering to rites and rituals as a way of awakening, means we are no longer behaving in a way out of fear or favor. Meaning I'm not only being a good boy because I want to go to heaven, right? I'm being a good boy because I'm afraid to go to hell. Right? At the root of that is what? The concern for who? So when we see this and this is removed, we are still practicing goodness and doing things, but it's no longer out of self-concern. This is where the compassion is. This is the selflessness. We all talk about selflessness. In order to be free from the self, you must first understand where the self comes from. But now we see that. So the Buddha talks about, once we have this experience, the amount of suffering, he compares it to, he uses the same analogy in many different ways. He's walking with some monks along the Ganges River, and he scoops up, the classic analogy, he uses it many ways, some sand in his fingernail. And he says, monks, what is greater? That big range, the Himalayan mountain range, right? Where is there more earth? The Himalayan mountain range or the sand in my fingernail? The monks are like, well, gee, the sand, Venerable Sir, the sand in your fingernail is way less than the earth of the great Himalayan mountains. He says, so too is one's suffering reduced. One's suffering is reduced that much just by seeing the Dharma, cutting these three feathers. Sign me up. Sign me up. Right? Now I'd like to share an analogy with you that I think really highlights this shift in perspective. So this is where this comes back to the other path factors, right view, harmonious view I like to call it. We are viewing life in such a way that is harmonious, that it's not so unbearable. Seeing the Dhamma is that, we call it a paradigm shift. We are now viewing life from a different perspective. So I'd like to share an analogy with you that illustrates this. Okay? So let's just say we're going down towards the local coffee shop. We want to have our latte. So as we're walking in, we open the door, we see a flyer on the door, and Kozen the Magnificent is in town. Great magician. Can I use you, Kozen, for this? Thank you. Right? Kozen the Great Magician is in town. And you're like, oh my goodness, I've seen this show before. It's amazing. I absolutely love it. Right? It's wonderful. And then you look and you see the time and the date, and you're like, oh no, that's today. It's right now. Right? You forget the coffee and you run down to the local theater. And as you're getting there, normally you really like this performance of the show. Normally you make extra effort to sit in the very front seat because you're blown away by the action, right? But this time you're late. And all the seats are full. And you're in like freak out mode. You're like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to sit? I don't want to miss this. But it just so happens your good friend works security. And he's working that event. And then he notices you sitting there freaking out, waves you over, and he says, hey, what do you usually hear I was looking for? You're like, yeah, I didn't know he was in town. He's like, don't worry, I have a special seat. You see those 3 little steps on the side of the stage? You can go sit there. You're like, whoa, okay, this is like VIP seating, right? So you're very grateful, thank you, you hurry up there right on time, right? And then the show begins to start. So now you're sitting like up close and personal, and you're excited. So as the show begins, right, the curtain, we have the backdrop, and the lights come on, and Kozen the Great comes out with his suit on, and you see the design and pattern of his suit, and you're really tuning in, and you're like, yes, here we go. And so the performance begins. But as you're looking clearly and carefully, you start to see rabbit ears sticking out of his back pocket. You see a couple extra wires off to the side. And so you start looking at that. Then the show is beginning and the performance is great, but you're seeing something. What are you seeing? You're seeing how the magic is produced. Normally we're in front and we're just like blown away by it. But this time you're seeing the Sangha, the seeing the formations. You're seeing of the I making, me like self. Right? You almost turn your way and like, I can't believe this. And as you turn away, you see all the people in the front row, just like you are, glossy-eyed and mesmerized, right, by the show, just like you used, blown away. But you're sitting there with the sense of like nidita, this passion, right? This type of letting go, this cessation. So as you're watching that, the show goes on, and as you're leaving, you bump into another good friend of yours. And he's like, hey, I didn't see you, I was looking for you. And he's all bug-eyed and glossy-eyed, magnificent show again, right? And so you're looking, and you're like, he asks you if you saw the show. You said, yeah, I was here, I saw the show. He's like, well, what'd you think? You're very equanimous, very calm, not all worked up. And you're like, yeah, I saw the show. He's like, you must have fallen asleep. Oh no, I saw the show. It's like, whatever. So I ask you this. Next time you're going into town for a coffee and you see magnificent, right? Are you going to buy that ticket? Just get your coffee, right? So that's that shift in view. That is the view. That is the harmonious view, right view, according to the awakening. Very, very wonderful experience. So what happens is, does that mean we stop having the five senses? Does that mean the four foundations of mindfulness go away? We have the exact same experience of being human. You can't escape that. That's the first arrow. We are born wet. We are born with this body. It grows old, it gets sick, and it dies. It's the first arrow. Right? So we have the same experience, but now we're interpreting that experience in a completely different way. We're interpreting that experience in the light of the Dharma, because we've seen the Dharma. And we say, no, this is a distorted perception. And what is our reference point? If what we're paying attention to and how we're interpreting that, that's giving rise to greed, anger, and ignorance, we're not seeing it. That makes sense? So it is my greatest wish that you all use this wonderful opportunity to practice and practice well. We're very, very fortunate to be born into the human realm. We are very, very fortunate to have the ability to learn the Dharma, to practice the Dharma, to process the Dharma. We all have good enough health to do this. And so it's my greatest wish that you don't take advantage of this. Practice well, practice diligently while you can, so you can start to break free from suffering. So please don't waste time. Be honest with yourselves. I really wish you all well. I wish you are all happy. I wish you are all successful in everything that you do, but more specifically in your spiritual practice, in your understanding. So hopefully, I had to cut that a little bit short, but hopefully you heard a little bit of something in there that is helpful and useful for you all. That's what I have for us today. Thank you, Kali, for your time and attention. Namaste.
Namaste.